Great news, everyone. I think I have what you've all been waiting for. How many of you would like to have a remote control to control your boyfriend? Yeah. Or, for the other half, how many of you would like one to control your girlfriend? That's right. Or we could have one to control our husbands, our wives. Oh, this would be great for those students out there. Or maybe not, maybe for everybody. How many of you would like one to control your parents? Yeah, I bet I didn't even see a show of hands, right? Yeah, totally. Send money, send more money, keep sending. It'd be like an ATM, right? Get them to bring it on. But there could be one to control your boss. Oh, yeah. One to control your neighbor. Yeah, even your pets. But how about this one? A remote control to control a kid. Yeah, look at all the buttons. They're fabulous. Yeah, I see people nodding their head. The parents in the audience are like, where do I get one? Bring it on. Yeah. So you could press a button, and the button would be, do your homework. Boom, they do it. Tidy their room. Boom, done. Don't argue with me. Oh, that would be the best, right? So for those of you who would like the whole set, you can see me after the talk. I'm going to make a lot of money today. But seriously, I mean, we're joking around. I mean, a part of us thinks, oh my God, life would be so much easier if I just had the remote control to get people to do what I wanted when I wanted them to do it. But there's this thing about this, that we actually use rewards and punishments like a remote control. And when we use the rewards and punishments, we actually wish that our kids or other people that we're using them on would just be like a television set or an appliance, and that they wouldn't answer back. But that's actually not the situation, is it? So actually what we have are human beings who are living and breathing, and when we make our demands, something's going on inside of them that we actually have to pay attention to. But oftentimes, we don't want to. And that's where Dr. Thomas Gordon says, when we use a controlling form of discipline, what we actually activate is the 3 R's: retaliation, rebellion, and resentment. And this is an example of what retaliation, rebellion, and resentment looks like. So when we use it in countries, as governments who are authoritarian, and we just want people to do what they're told, do you see retaliation? Yeah. Resentment? Rebellion? You bet you do. And Dr. Louise Porter said 75% of behavioral disruptions in a family are a result of someone using power over someone else. So when we're using the power, we're trying to get an outcome, but actually we're getting more than we bargained for. We're actually getting the 3 R's as well. And then, to make this even crazier, we spend most of our time dealing with what we set into action. This has implications on a broad scale. And I want you to think about the crisis in our country right now with regard to mass shootings and adolescent suicides. Because what I'm talking about right now actually will inform that conversation tremendously. When we look at society, we can see how it's playing out. And I can imagine if you think within yourself, maybe your own story, or ones that you're observing, we can also see it there. So when we try to make people do what we want them to do, when we want them to do it, we pay a price for it. But not only that, we're not acknowledging the other person's feelings and needs. It's as if their part doesn't matter. And that's a very, very scary thing to do. Some of us have been trained so well that regardless of what's going on inside of us, we just look like that. Because we have been trained not to object and only to put on the happy face. And we can suppress everything that's going on inside of us. I know, certainly in my family system, that all that mattered was what will the neighbors think? And you have to behave. and you have to look good for us as a family. So it was all about, regardless of what was going on inside of me, to suppress that. When my daughter was a little girl, actually, when I was on an airplane, let me tell you this, I overheard a conversation, and it was between a little girl and her grandparents. And the little girl said, "I want some paper." And Grandma said, "Well, you have your coloring book, honey, just play with that." "No, but I want some paper." "Well, don't talk to me like that, and play with your coloring book, and when we get off the plane, we can find the paper." "But I want some paper." I said, "Don't talk to me that way. And if you speak to me that way one more time, you don't get to sit next to Grandpa." "But I want some paper." And finally, Grandpa looked at her and said, "You want some paper?" And she said, "Yeah, Grandpa, I want to do my picture. And there aren't any blank pages in the coloring book." "Oh," he said, "okay. Well, it's a short flight, honey, and the light's on, so I actually can't get up. But I do have a napkin. Would that be okay? Could you do your picture on the napkin?" And she took the napkin and she said, "That's great, Grandpa, thanks so much." And the conflict was over because he actually acknowledged that behind that was a child with a need. Grandma didn't get it. So as she did threatens and insults, the child got more and more panicked. And I can hear the conflict escalating. And I thought to myself, God, I wonder how this is going to end. But thank God Grandpa was there. Because if he hadn't been there, I imagine there would have been like a big thing going on. But when we don't acknowledge children's perspectives, it's dangerously close to communicating that they don't matter. Yeah. And we don't want them to think that they don't matter. So we need to learn how to listen, because otherwise they feel like they are spoiled if they speak up for their needs, or that they're bad, or some people even call them manipulative. But this child wasn't spoiled or bad or manipulative or even unreasonable. She was just trying to speak out her side and have it heard. And she was having a lot of trouble with Grandma hearing her. When my daughter was 5 years old, she came home and said to me, "Mom, I hate school, I'm not going to school." And I thought, well, gosh, this is my child who loves school. I wonder what's going on at school. And so I knew what was happening with this "I hate school" was what we call a presenting problem. But it actually wasn't the underlying unmet need. So I leaned in and listened to what was happening at school, and I found out that when she went out to recess, there was a bully who said to the other girls, "Don't play with Pia." No wonder she didn't want to go to school, right? And here's the other thing. Children don't have the capacity to say, "Mom, Dad, my needs for psychological safety and security are not being met at school." They don't know how to do it. Actually, a lot of adults don't know how to do it. Yeah, they're like, that really hit. Yeah, everybody's like, yeah, you got that right. So we do signaling behavior. We drown, and some of us do not drown politely. In fact, I call it the tragic expression of an unmet need. Tragic expressions of unmet needs we are seeing all over this country, where people can't speak to their underlying feelings and needs because they weren't mirrored back. They were told to do what I wanted them to do because I said so. And we didn't acknowledge them because somewhere in our mind, children are just supposed to behave, right? So I went to school and I told the counselor about what was going on, and she said, "I'm going to call in each of the followers. I'm not even going to speak to the bully. I'll get back to you and let you know what I find." So she called them in one by one, and she said, "Are you happy about excluding Pia on the playground?" And not one of them was. And she said, "Well, then why are you doing it?" "Because I don't know how to say no to the bully." These are 5-year-olds who already have lost touch with their no. Let that sink in. They can't even say no to a strong peer, let alone imagine if there's a power differential with an adult. Do you think they could access it? Not a chance. So the counselor said, I'm going to teach you guys how to say, no, I won't do you tell me to do, because I don't feel good about it. And so the next day when they went on to recess, and the bully said, don't play with Pia today. And the girls turned and said to the bully, no, I won't do what you tell me to do because I don't feel good about it. How long do you think that the bullying went on? That's right. It was over just like that. Because the bully needs the followers. And if the followers stand up to the bully, playground bullying would be over. So we need to empower our children to say no. And I'll just plant a seed here. How many of those mass shootings in schools were by children who had been bullied? A lot of them. And do you think that they began to feel resentful and isolated and alone? Did we miss the boat somewhere along the way? Because people don't start by, what I call swinging from the chandelier. They get there by not being acknowledged. The largest study on child sexual abuse that was ever done was between the United States and the United Kingdom, with 580 perpetrators and with, on average, 380 different victims. And they interviewed 75 of those that were incarcerated, and they asked them, how'd you get away with it? Do you know what they said? Children who have been trained to be obedient and compliant and do what adults tell them to do don't even know that they're allowed to object. Wow. Our children need to know that their side matters. They need to be allowed to object without being considered disrespectful, badly behaved, selfish. I know for me to find my no took me about 26 years. And it wasn't until the end of my second year of law school, and I had to have a major event happen in my life. I was in the top third of my class. I'd already lined up the great summer job, and my sister died of a brain tumor. And I couldn't just keep on going because it wasn't the first loss in my family. I had a brother who took his life by suicide when I was 16 years old. And my response to that tragedy was to double down and be the overachiever, to compensate, to make up for, within my own family system, that sense of loss. So I had given up on honoring myself in service to a system, but I couldn't do it anymore. And I knew that I needed to go up those stairs and tell my parents that I needed to leave law school, that I had to find, what's it all about, Alfie? It was a spiritual quest for me at that point to find the greater context in my life. And I went up those stairs, but I needed support. And thank God I had a best friend who stood at the bottom of the stairs and cheered me on. Believe in yourself, trust yourself, believe in your inner voice, you can do it. And with that enthusiasm, I walked up that staircase and I got upstairs and I delivered the news. And there was a shrill scream from my mother. I thought I mortally wounded her. And that's how difficult it was for me to speak up and say my truth. I had to be strong enough to be able to handle the emotions of the people around me. But as a friend told me, once you did that and you started to honor yourself, your life became a series of green lights. And I thought, you're right. It did. Like, I have had a grace-filled life where I have listened to my inner voice, trusted it, and spoken up. And that is the power of you. Thank you.